Welcome to Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant podcast. These are the stories of those who have received, given, and who are waiting for the gift of life, organ transplantation. Now here's your host and heart and kidney recipient, BJ Odom.
Welcome to Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant podcast, a place where we journey through the incredible world of organ transplantation. I'm your host, BJ Odom. Each week, we uncover inspiring stories and meet extraordinary individuals who are connected to the world of transplants. Remember to support us by leaving that 5-star review and subscribing on your preferred podcast platform. And don't forget to join us on Facebook at Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. This week, we continue with National Multi-Ethnic Donor Awareness Month. On today's episode, we talk with Crystal Pitts, a kidney recipient who received her transplant during the COVID-19 pandemic. She is a vibrant young woman who is passionate about her career of helping youth learn leadership skills, as well as pursuing her passion to one day perform on Broadway. She can sing, she can dance, and has performed for local entertainment companies right here in Florida. She can share the importance of donation within the African American community. Let us welcome Crystal Pitts. And man, starting off your transplant during COVID, that had to be a little crazy.
Sure. Yeah, that was definitely interesting timing, a little scary timing, because it was pretty early on, April 2020. And, things had started shutting down in March. And so I hadn't really left my house outside of dialysis, and I had transitioned to working from home. So yeah, it was quite a time, especially with who can be in the hospital with you. So that was a little difficult.
And also I know that, when you get your kidney transplant, because now I'm a kidney transplant recipient and a heart recipient. Right. And I know that, everything changes once you become a transplant recipient, right, because your immune system is really cut in half. And I know as, a person like I was very nervous during that time. I was doing stand-up comedy when the world came to a close, and I was out there on the road going, okay, I better get home and right, stay there and get away from anybody that could be sick. So that must have been, right, I think, somewhat petrifying, if you can say the least.
Right. Well, it was definitely scary, but I think I was the most nervous when I was finally on my own, because I met my parents for the transplant, and my parents booked this big, extended stay sort of suite. So it had an upstairs loft for them, and then a kitchen, and then a downstairs room and bathroom that were just for me. And my mom was already just super duper cautious. And then they kicked it up a notch once I got out of the hospital and stayed at that suite with them for about 30 days. And so everything that came in was wiped down. We had masks everywhere we went. We were extremely careful. So I felt very taken care of. It's different when mom is there. And so I felt safer then. And then when I got dropped back off in Tampa, I'm like, oh no. And of course, I did get sick. I didn't get COVID, but I got really sick in June and spent my first birthday post-transplant in the ER. So it was just how quickly you could just pick up something simple. And I hadn't gone anywhere except for maybe back and forth to do labs. And so, yeah, it was definitely a scary time when I was on my own here in Tampa versus all right, my mom's got me covered.
Now, so your mom came in from out of town, or were you from out of town at that point?
I'm originally from Georgia, and so my parents live in the Savannah area. And so when I got the call from Mayo Clinic, which is funny in itself because, Jacksonville Mayo Clinic that's about an hour and a half from where my family lives. So I got the call. I was on work calls. And so I just kept ignoring this call. And then I just went on hold, and the third ring I picked up, and they said something along the lines of, "Did you still want a kidney?" I was like, yeah, that has not changed. I would like that very much. So, so I drove to Jacksonville. I already had my bag packed because that is who I am. I had that bag packed for like at least a year or two. So I had my little bag packed, and my mom and dad met me in Jacksonville. We actually pulled up at the same time. I was pulling in, I recognized their truck. And so, they met me there. And then, of course, only one person could come in, and they put my mom and I in a room, and we were tested for COVID. And then, back then, like, you had to like wait on your results. And so we had to just stay the night, like, waiting. And then the next morning they came in, they're like, "All right, you guys are negative." Then a few moments later, they're like, "Let's do this." So yeah, my parents met me in Jacksonville, and we stayed there for the next at least 30 days.
Yeah, I remember with my kidney transplant, we were there for 30 days, because they want you to go back like almost daily to make sure you're not rejecting and all your blood's good and everything. So that is quite a story.
That.
I mean, there's a lot of people with kidney transplant stories, but getting it done during COVID. Now, when you said they called and said, "Do you still want a kidney?" Were they meaning because we're in COVID protocol?
Right.
Is this something you still want to do? Is that what they were asking, or was they just?
I'm wondering now that you're saying that. Maybe they're like, "Hey, do you still want to do this because it's scary out here?" But or maybe like, "Okay, well, you missed this call a few times. You still want to do this." So I don't know where they were coming from. But not only, like, I mean, of course, COVID is like the big thing, but also I got my kidney on Easter Sunday. So, so my mom likes that story a lot. And I mean, I do too, but she will let you know that her daughter got her kidney on a Resurrection Day. So,
Awesome.
Easter Sunday morning, I got a kidney.
Awesome. Now, what's really funny now, I talked to a lady just a few weeks ago that was a living donor for, an acquaintance of hers. And they had to wait until, because they were all checked out and everything, and then COVID hit. And since that was kind of like an elective, I guess, because you probably got a deceased donor, and they were doing a living donor, and they had to wait for like till the hospitals reopened and they started doing, regular surgery. So that was quite lucky, but I'm saying it was probably quite scary too. So congratulations to you there.
Thank you.
Now, also, I read a little bit of your bio, and like I said, I was out doing, stand-up comedy, but I don't know if you would call this showbiz. I guess if you want to work on Broadway, that's showbiz.
Yeah.
Welcome to showbiz. You have, what are your dreams, if I may ask?
I love singing. I love acting. I like dancing. I'm not a real dancer, but I like doing it. I love to perform. And I was performing before and during and after kidney disease and transplant. So that was kind of a big deal for me. It was one of the things that kept me going, that I had an opportunity to still go out and, make someone's day and do something fun. And like, with performing, it's a lot of teamwork. And so like working with my friends to like make this thing happen every day was really cool. So I was really grateful to still be able to do it, and had a lot of really supportive people that were fellow performers, my friends who were stage managers, like directors, managers, show managers, like with Busch Gardens and otherwise, people who just were looking out and understood that, okay, well, I just got back from dialysis, cut me a little slack, I need a moment. Or people checking in saying, is it okay if we do this? Are you going to be okay if we do this? I remember sitting in this studio, and a friend of mine helping me put makeup over some Band-Aids and some scars on my access, so I could put like gloves on just so that it wouldn't show. So like I was just surrounded with really, really great people. And so, I was able to continue to do what I love. And I'm, still trying to do it, and just want to keep being able to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Now, before we go to the beginning of your journey, because I know everyone has, a beginning before transplant, but just so we're kind of in the same realm of time. Now, like I said, I was doing stand-up comedy at the time that COVID hit, and, I was pretty nervous. And in fact, of course, I was older, and, I was in my mid 60s already. And so I was a little bit hesitant to go back out on the road. So really, I never went back to comedy. But when you first went out there, was it nerve-wracking for you to go, back out on a stage? And because when you have an audience, they're all facing you. That means they're sneezing, they're coughing in your direction.
Yes. So I was really fortunate. Like, I did a show for a community theater here in Tampa right before in February. And then the next performance I did was I think that August. And it was a from home version of a show called Disenchanted. I did it with Laboratory Theater in Fort Myers. And so the show Disenchanted released a version of the show where every character performs individually, and then it was put together digitally so people could watch it from home. And the people who were in the show with me, I did not meet them except for virtually. We each went to the stage or to the theater on our own. We went to the recording studio on our own. And so I was really just performing with like two other people who also were just extremely supportive and understanding, and even did a promo where I got to talk about Multicultural Awareness Month for organ donation and everything. So it was really, really great. It was a nice, like, easing back into it without being just completely terrified with everybody around. And just the theater community in general was just so eager to get back to it that a lot of theaters were doing like virtual shows where it's just the people in the cast, and in your contracts or in your orientation, it's saying, you have to be, COVID free, and you have to be careful. Don't go out and party and come to rehearsal, that sort of thing. So I think that environment was a good supportive one, because if you're performing with other people, like, you're going to be close to them. If there's an audience, you're getting what they have. But there were a lot of precautions being taken during that time, which I was grateful for. So that was the first thing back. And then I work for a local party company as well, where I play a princess who kissed a frog. And so with that, I remember doing a video where I just, got to like sing happy birthday and that sort of thing. And then I did one party where it was just a little girl and her grandparents and her parents, and we were outside on their patio. So really kind of eased back into it. And again, just being with people who are supportive and saying, okay, are you okay to do this? Here's how we're going to do it. So yeah, but definitely was nervous as time went on. As things got a little more loose, definitely got a little bit nervous about not just COVID, but anything, especially if you are a children's performer. Kiddos like their germs.
Oh, yes.
So, so yeah.
My adult act, I had a comedy magic act that I toured, in comedy clubs, but I also did children's parties. I definitely did go back to children's parties after, even my, my surgery. But I did do kids' parties after my heart transplant, but then my kidney transplant came in 2015, and I said, I think I'm done with the kiddos.
Yeah. It's risky. So yeah.
And my daughter teaches, so yeah, I know about those little kid germs.
Oh wow.
Well, let's go back to the beginning. Sure. You first, find out that you're having failing kidneys. Let's we have to backtrack now because the story was so interesting going in, and having your surgery doing COVID. But let's go back to the beginning. You're perfectly healthy. Tell me the story.
So I think that I'm perfectly healthy. I actually started noticing little things that I just kind of ignored for a bit. Um, I was working full time. I work in the nonprofit world, and so I was working full time um, at a residential facility for survivors of human trafficking. And so it's a lot of work. And so I was exhausted all the time and could not figure that out. But also I was performing part-time at Busch Gardens. And so I kind of just chalked that up to, well, I'm doing a lot and I'm tired. So it's fine. And then I had a terrible taste in my mouth all the time. And so to cover that up, I just always had like a piece of candy or gum, and I was like, I'm fine now. And then I had some swelling, and I kept thinking that I was eating something that maybe I was allergic to. And then eventually I went home to, also I was having a hard time with like my breathing and like stamina during the show. Like my first line, I would say hi after doing a dance, and it was hi. And I'm like, oh no. And so instead, again, I had to cover up for everything. And so my initial thought was, oh my goodness, I am getting old. I'm the oldest person doing this. I have to like step it up. And so instead of saying, what could this be? I went home and I would play the tracks of the show in my living room. And I would do the show full out in my living room again and again and like jog in place and sing the songs. And so I just like pushed it harder, thinking that that would fix it and I would overcome my old age. And so I drove home for Mother's Day, and that would have been, I guess, 2016. Drove home for Mother's Day. And when I got there, my ankles and my feet were so swollen I could barely stand up. My brother came out and like helped me get inside. And he's like, what did you do? And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm allergic to Firehouse subs. I'm not. I still haven't had Firehouse subs since then. I know that that's ridiculous and I'm not allergic, but just that memory. So
Oh yeah, once it's in your psyche,
yeah,
it's like
yep,
that's it, no more.
right. The rational part of me is like, it's probably okay, but no. So nothing against Firehouse, but yeah. So I went home and my mom was like, yeah, I don't think this is normal. You need to be seen by a doctor. And also just not going to the bathroom at all. And my mom is a retired elementary school teacher. And so she knows if somebody's not getting up and going to the potty. So she mentioned that to me as well. And so I'm like, oh, that is weird. And still didn't think anything of it. I saw my doctor and they said, well, your blood pressure is off. And I've never had blood pressure issues. And so I was like, don't even know what that means. And they gave me the number and I was like, mm-hmm. And I guess my reaction was not what it should have been. So they handed me a little card about hypertension and had the numbers on it. And I'm like, wait a minute, how did this happen? And they're like, yeah, we're going to do some testing. So specifically, I want to take a look at your kidneys. Because if you've never had high blood pressure before, and some of the things that he was asking, I was like, yes. And so he's like, let's take a look at this. And I think that might have been, I don't know, is toward the end of the week maybe. And then he said that he'd let me know something by another day. And he's like, in the meantime, keep an eye on your blood pressure. If you start feeling like this, that probably means your blood pressure is elevated. So I went on about my busy life, and I was driving home, and I used to take my dog to work with me. And so I was driving home, and I was like, I'm just going to stop at this urgent care and just ask them to take my blood pressure really quick because I feel really, really odd. A nurse there took my blood pressure, and she talked to me in a very kind voice and said, hey, do you have someone that could come get your dog? I was like, no. And she's like, do you feel like you could get your dog back home and then go to a hospital? Like, what is going on? And she's like, your blood pressure is concerning to like pretty dangerous levels right now. So I need you to drop that dog off and go to the ER immediately. And I did that. And in the waiting room, I could not keep my head up. I kept falling asleep. By the time I had gotten back there, hours had passed. I didn't even realize it. And I had a doctor that was not great. And so, especially with, this being like multicultural awareness, I always talk about people now, like ask that question, advocate for yourself, because there are people who may not be in the right frame of mind to do the job that they're doing. And so he said, wow, somebody from urgent care sent you here? I said, yeah, my blood pressure, she was worried about it. And he's like, wow, I bet you paid them, huh? Well, I guess I'm in the wrong business, and like made a joke about me paying money twice. And he said, yeah, you just have high blood pressure. And
That's
I was
all?
like, well, that was it. And I said, well, you guys got my blood work, right? And he's like, yeah. But honestly, a lot of Black people have high blood pressure. Those are his words. And
Wow.
yeah, and I was on the phone like with my aunt, and again, just in and out. And my aunt said, Chris, are you okay with that? Are you okay with that answer? And I was like, oh, wait, no, I'm not. And it was like middle of the night at this point. And so I said, well, can you take a look at my blood work and see? Because I've never had a high blood pressure issue. I work a pretty physical job and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, we'll take a look at it. But otherwise, you're just discharged if we don't see anything. And so they like let me go. They handed me, the nurse came back in and said, hey, they're discharging you. I said, okay. And he's like, hey, do you have anybody in your family that's been in kidney failure or kidney disease? And I was like, maybe. And he's like, you said you have a follow-up with your primary care, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, please keep that appointment. So he knew. The blood work showed at that time my BUN and creatinine was through the roof, and my kidneys were functioning at 5%. And they sent me home with a prescription that would have been really dangerous if I had taken it for high blood pressure. And so I went to work the next day and did a show. And I got a call during the show from my primary care office, and it was like, hey, you need to stop what you're doing. And because they had got my blood work in.
Get to the hospital.
And get to the hospital, like right now. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. I just went to the hospital last night. And she's like, hold, please. And I told her what happened. She's like, hold, please. And so she got back on and she's like, yes, the doctor does not like that. He is sending you somewhere different, and he is requesting like your records from that hospital, blah, blah, blah. And you were checking into this hospital. And so I was like, okay, I'll get there soon. And still, and she said to me, it seems like you were in kidney failure. You're going to be admitted today. I was like, that sounds crazy, and just did not want to take that seriously. And I said, it's fine. And so there was still like 2 more shows to do that day, 2 or 3. And so I was like, I'm dressed, I'm here. And I was really trying to downplay it. And again, I had a real supportive crew. Our stage manager was like, I can't tell you what to do. Let me know. So I know if I need to call somebody in. And so, but a couple of my friends were like, one of them in particular was like, this sounds serious. Maybe we should just start packing you up. I'm going to take a long lunch and we're both going to leave and go maybe stop at Walmart and make a little bag for the hospital. And I was like, maybe. And then another friend pulled me aside and said, hey, I want to pray with you really quick. And she started praying, and I was like boohoo crying. And I was like, oh no, this is serious. And I called my parents, and they said, my mom, who again really knows me, she's like, listen, I know you're going to try to wait, but you need to go right now. By the time they have an answer or someone is ready to come and talk to you, we'll be there. And I don't know how they were able to make that work, but I got checked into the hospital, went through all these tests, did all these things. And by the time the doctor came in to speak to us, my parents were sitting in there, my mom with her notebook, and they were there to get that information. And like the doctor saying that you're in end-stage renal disease and you are going to have to start dialysis soon, and what you really need is a new kidney. I immediately felt like I had the wind knocked out of me. and I started like feeling that I was going to fall over. And my mom, with her notebook and writing, came and like leaned up against me to keep me sitting straight and started asking the doctor questions immediately. Okay, what do we need to do? And how do we do this? And where do we schedule this? And what if one of us wants to give her our kidney? Like immediately got to work. So, yeah. And my dad, of course, is like, trying to make me laugh about like taking his kidney and blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, definitely would not have made it without like the support of my circle and my family. And so it was a whirlwind. Thought I was okay. Finally went to the doctor and they're like, "Yup, time to go." And so, yeah, I started dialysis pretty soon after. That was maybe early June. And I started dialysis like end of July because my mom somehow had she did the scheduling, got me scheduled to get a fistula, and I had surgery within like the next week. It was quite a time. So yeah, a whirlwind from, oh my gosh, my legs are swollen, I'm not feeling great, in May, to July, I'm on a dialysis machine. So really crazy times.
Thank God for mamas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, see what's really funny with me, I'd already had the heart transplant before my kidneys went. So I was out on a cruise with some, and my ankles, they just kept getting bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I got off the boat, I had like these elephant ankles and I went directly to the hospital because I thought I was in heart failure, congestive heart failure.
Yeah.
So, but no, they said, no, your kidneys are pretty well going and we need to get you on dialysis. And yeah, it's like really funny how our bodies kind of are telling us stuff and we're like, no, it's something else.
But it's fine. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're doing much better. And this month, of course, it's National Multi-Ethnic Donor Awareness Month. And you are here to tell those folks that it is a very important thing to know and to participate in. Now, was your family kind of like in that mode already, for donations, or have they kind of went along with your journey and says, wow, this is pretty important and we need to share these words?
So, both. So with, my immediate family, like my mom and dad, and, maybe my brother, I remember, when I was getting my license at 16, and they were asking me, about organ donation. And I was like, what does that mean to my parents? Because it sounds kind of scary if you're a teenager and somebody's like, hey, do you want to donate your organs? And so I remember asking them then, and then they were the ones that explained it to me initially. Like, yeah, it's when you pass on, if someone else needs something that you have, that'll help somebody else. And so it was just a no-brainer thing that you do. But since my journey, I know there's been people in my extended circle, some friends that I was close to that have said, yeah, I always thought this, or, I believed that myth that no one's going to try to save you and blah, blah, blah. And now seeing all of the hoops you have to jump through even to be tested, like, no, it's not possible. Like, you can't just, okay, well, here's a kidney, let me just give it to someone. That's not how it works at all. And so some of them seeing what I went through and understanding the importance of it, like on a personal level, a few friends have become organ donors. And I've had conversations with family members, extended family members, about the importance of it as well.
I know once, it affects you, you really open up to it for sure. And I was interviewing someone who had a liver transplant, who unfortunately had lost his wife like a few years prior to his liver transplant, and even, knew that he needed a liver transplant. And it was still kind of a surreal moment when he was on the podcast with me, explaining how he wished he knew then what he knew today after his liver transplant, because he definitely would have said, whatever my wife has, that if you can use anything, please do, save lives, do whatever you can. And of course, at the time, no, we're not going to do that. And, he's made a 360, but he's now been touched, with a liver transplant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always, I've had a couple opportunities to do some really cool speaking engagements, and I always mention my niece. Um, she was maybe 8 when I got my transplant, but she started learning about auntie being sick and what this means and what that means. And I remember her saying, "So is your kidney right here?" Like pointing at my arm because that's where I had all the Band-Aids. And so like explaining to her about kidneys at a pretty young age. And so when I got a kidney, her mom let her call and she said, "How are you feeling? I heard you got a new kidney." And I told her, "Yes, I did." And she said, "Well, where did you get it?" And I told her, that someone who had passed away and was going to heaven wouldn't need it anymore. They left me theirs. And so she, her mom sent me a text later and said that she had told her about our conversation. And she said, "I'm really happy for Auntie, but I'm also kind of sad for that family." And so I always mention that because, like, in a nutshell, that's what it is. Like, it's taking something um, that's sad or tragic, just a low moment, and bringing it to something where there's still some good and some hope. And so I always say, like, even a kid could understand that. And so I use that when I'm talking to other people about becoming an organ donor or just the importance of it, that yes, there's going to be some darkness and some sadness. And this is one way to get some good out of it, or one way to keep giving even after you've gone on. So I always use that.
And I have talked to some donor families, and to hear them explain, yes, they're in pain, and yes, it hurts. But to explain, like I just talked to a mother a few weeks ago, and she got to hear her son's heart beating in another person. And I actually cracked up asking the question, what, because I'm a heart transplant survivor also. And she told me what that felt like. And it was truly amazing.
Yeah. Like her son's a hero, like it's just crazy to think about. Like this person who unfortunately has gone on has like saved a life in their passing. So it's pretty amazing.
Well, your story is pretty amazing, and I do wish you the very best of luck. Also, now the Afro-American community, you do a lot for the your own community, and is this something you do now? Speak a lot of organ donation. How involved are you with the community?
Yeah, so I'm a lifelink volunteer or organizer, and so a lot of the volunteer events that I pick up are speaking engagements. So that does give me an opportunity to speak about it. And then some of our volunteer opportunities are tabling events where we're talking to people about it. And I definitely always kind of pay special attention to people of color because I know that the numbers are lower, and I know that our numbers of specifically kidney disease are higher. And so I definitely try to speak to that even more on a personal level, because I've had conversations, with people in my family, people in my circle that, we've learned that, grown up hearing that, people may not work as hard to save you, that sort of thing. And I mean, even in my own story, I had a doctor that did not do his best to try to help me and pass it off as a Black issue. And so I speak to my circle and people that I meet about, for one, just advocating for yourself, but also how important it is that we are also part of the giving back and part of this movement and of dispelling myths that we may have heard, even though, yes, there's definitely some mistrust in the medical community because of our history as a country. There's some bad things, but just trying to push forward with what we can do for one another in giving as far as organ donation.
Well, Crystal Pitts, you have an amazing story, and I appreciate you so much for coming on the podcast. And I always do this with my guests before I let you go. Is there anything that you would like to share that maybe you haven't shared to let the world know about transplants and organ donation?
Well, just that it's important, and that not doing it because of a myth. It's time to move past that, even though it's valid. The way that we are feeling about that, some of us are feeling about it, those are valid feelings, but this is a way that we can definitely give back. And I'm living proof that it matters that people are saying yes to organ donation. I'm still able to kick it and sing and sort of dance because someone did say yes. And so, say yes to organ donation and share that with your family, share that with your friends, share that with your circle. So, yeah. And thank you to people who are organ donors, specifically mine, that them and their family said yes. Super grateful.
Well, I appreciate your time today. And I just have one other favor to ask, if I could.
Sure, yeah.
When you get that gig on Broadway, make sure I get a pair of tickets and the wife and I will come and enjoy seeing you on Broadway.
100%. Thank you so much.
Oh, best of luck to you, Crystal, and thanks again. Thank you so much, Crystal, for sharing your story during National Multi-Ethnic Donor Awareness Month. It's celebrated throughout August. The month's goal is to improve the quality of life for diverse communities by creating a positive culture for organ, eye, and tissue donation. So join us again next week for another touching episode, Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. If you have a transplant story you'd like to share, reach out to us at giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com and connect with us on Facebook at Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. Until next time, I'm BJ Odom, and thank you so much for being a part of our journey, reminding us all to appreciate each day and cherish the extraordinary gift of life.